Day 459 of the Ukrainian War Map, also known as the Russo-Ukrainian War. Juzzy here, and today is another update as I take a simplified and down-to-earth approach to some of the most important happenings on the ground in Ukraine. So starting off, we'll scoot across to those Russian losses, and currently Russia is sitting on 206,600 military personnel losses. Then in terms of Russian hardware losses, 3 tanks, 7 APVs, and 11 artillery. So some modest equipment losses, including double digits for artillery there. Then we'll head back across to the map today, and we'll start out in Russia once more, as we typically do these days, where the power grid in the Belgorod Oblast, in fact nearby the city there, was it actually took hit from what was believed to be 2 Ukrainian drone-dropped munitions just yesterday. Then also in the Belgorod Oblast, so a bit closer to the border this one, so we can see it right there. So there was violent explosions and fire that were reported in Shebekino. And given the proximity, it was likely as a result of artillery duels or exchanges between both border sides. But it didn't stop there for the Belgorodian Oblast. Oh no. As right up in the northwestern pocket of the oblast, in a location by the name of Grafovka, there was a bit of heavy shelling going on. Now, some claimed it to be Ukrainian shelling, but it may have been as a result of partisan activity as well. And it must be said for this region, due to the recent Russian freedom fighting group incursions here, that Ukrainian intelligence said that they gained valuable information as a result of those recent activities. And oh, I bet they did. For instance, learning that the Russian border forces are largely non-existent for at least, well, an issue of about 700 kilometers or about 450 miles all up along there. Unexpected requirements for border forces for the Russian army. Then we'll move back to the Ukrainian map for the day, where at least 52 of the Russian kamikaze drones were shot down. Now, in total, there were said to be 54, so a pretty decent hit rate there. And many of these Shahed, Iranian-based Shahed drones were particularly focused on the Kyiv capital. No surprises there. And in terms of damage, the debris from one of these Shahed drones hit the rooftop of a building in Kyiv's Pechersky district after being neutralized in the air. And what we also learned from these drone strikes is that serial production numbers, which have now reached the 1,000 milestone, as Iran, the supplier, appears to continue to somewhat provide a semi-steady supply of these winged devils to Russia. Then we'll move across to the Donbas, and we'll start out in Soledar today, as 7 Russian soldiers in Soledar, who were formerly inmates and are now Russian servicemen recruits, deserted their posts, and Russia is now on the hunt for them. Which is interesting to say the least, as prisoners typically have a limited access to the information space regarding this war when they're shipped off as cannon fodder to the front lines. So if we have Russian inmates, soldiers fleeing now, it would appear that the word has gotten out all over the town for Russia that if you serve in the Russian army, you end up dying in the Russian army. Then we'll move on down just a little bit today, as the Ukrainian armed forces were reported as having made an advance of 300 to 400 meters in the direction of the city of Bakhmut. In fact, there has been a noted decrease in intensity of combat operations in the region over the past few days, as the Wagner forces have been vacating, leaving the Russian regular army to take their place. And as for the Russian regular army, is, how do you say, a little more risk-averse than the Wagner PMC forces. But not a whole lot more, as they still do use a lot of senseless cannon fodder tactics. But it's still a close second in that race to the abattoir. Oh, and even the PMC boss Prigozhin himself admitted this just a couple of days ago, saying that 95% of the Wagner militia group forces were killed in Bakhmut, which is another genuine reason for him to leave, basically. Then heading on a little bit further down south in the Donbas, so in Avdiivka, the Russian forces attempted to advance again, but were repelled again. So some commander in this region continues to make the same failing decisions over and over. But the even bigger problem for the Russian forces here is that they shockingly or astonishingly lack the heavy armor with which to perform successful assaults. I mean, their best and most recent assault operations into Avdiivka consisted of 2 BMP infantry fighting vehicles and 1 old tank. Needless to say, that equipment didn't last very long. So we're not exactly talking heavy armor, brigade-sized assaults here at all for the Russian forces. Then we continue to move down on the Donbas here, so nearby Mariupol. So explosions were reported in Nikolska, near Mariupol, the city there today, which follows on from another explosion yesterday in Mariupol itself, as very few locations are off limits for the AFU right now. Oh, and lastly in the Donbas, I did miss something quite the ways away up north, so near the Svartova area, where a smallish Russian ammunitions depot was located and hit by the Ukrainian forces, causing a bit of a snap, crackle, and pop when you look closely. And that was right here at Kuzemivka. Then we'll move across on the map a little bit more south, as there was yet another notable explosion in Berdyansk, just like any other day of the week really at this point. And now we've been told that the occupying authorities in this region have been forced to leave, as the situation is simply just too hot for them. And generally, in this region, the Ukrainian forces have stepped up their frontline attacks in the Zaporizhia frontline as they continue to look to be testing Russian defenses. Then, on the south bank of the Dnipro River in Kherson, so a Russian D-20 152mm towed howitzer was destroyed by another Excalibur missile. And this is happening a lot at the moment, as basically we have the scouting Ukrainian drone that locates the invaders' artillery pieces, then relays the precise coordinates back to the Ukrainian artillerists, and the rest is history. Smoky history. Then moving south, so as for Crimea. Now, this is more of a noteworthy piece than anything, but in a cheeky comment made by Deputy Head of Ukraine's main intelligence directorate, it was claimed that the Crimean Bridge, which is the Kerch Bridge that connects the Crimean Peninsula to the Russian mainland, is still only standing to give Russians living on the occupied territory a chance to escape, as Ukraine is making the larger point that it has the missile range capability to strike at any moment now. You see, time has actually not been Russia's friend in this war, as the longer it takes for Russia to complete its special military operation, it simply means Ukraine has more time to become sufficiently militarily equipped with newer and better offensive capabilities through acquisitions from the free world, but also indigenously developed and produced weaponry, which leads me to the news for the day. So we'll start off with the hardware updates in that case again, as Ukraine has unveiled their new unmanned vehicle, the Toloka TLK-150, which is actually an underwater vehicle, which makes it especially difficult for the Russian Navy to sight it and destroy it. And there are a few variants of this platform which will put Russia's Black Sea Fleet at greater and greater risk as time passes, and there's many of these produced. Then in some other hardware news, so about 400 Ukrainian soldiers have commenced training to operate the US-provided M1 Abrams main battle tanks. It's said that training will take about 10 to 12 weeks to complete. And although the Abrams acquisition and training process has been a bit slower than, say, the German Leopard tank inbounds to Ukraine, and reason being, the Abrams have never really been a utilized platform for NATO countries within Europe. Because of the additional steps of infrastructure, maintenance, training, and logistics setups required that just didn't exist for the Abrams prior to now. Oh, and there's also interoperability and standardization requirements, everything to really get it all in line to get Ukraine ready, set, go for them. And so I do look forward to seeing these absolute behemoths on the battlefield soon as well, and the UK Challenger 2s and the German Leopard 2s all in formation. It'll be pretty great. Then in some other news, Belarusian President Lukashenko is feeling sick again for the second time this month, and is in critical condition after meeting with Putin in Moscow. Although, unlike last time, when he was unwell during Russia's May 9th military parade, you might remember the look on his face there. And at that point, he was transferred back to a Belarusian hospital in Minsk, the capital. But this time, his condition was considered too critical for him to actually be transferred back to Belarus. And all of this happened just after having a closed-door meeting with Putin in Moscow, where Putin perhaps offered him a higher dose of that tasty polonium tea that it's been suggested he's well known for offering. So, bloody hell. Twice in a month, and it's always happening when Uncle Luka is here in Moscow. Coincidence? I don't know. And this is complete speculation of mine, but Putin has probably tired of Uncle Luka's same old excuse for putting off a direct Belarusian involvement and assault operations from Belarus into Ukraine. Then in a couple of quick funnies to round it all off today, guys. So this one's probably more of an oddity than a funny, but Russia's internal information space continues to tighten restrictions as Russian state media cannot air or publish anything that references Prigozhin or his Wagner PMC, for instance. So a fully mandated information blackout, media blackout of Wagner activities and Prigozhin information. So Russia's nailing down of that dystopian reality sounds just more and more amazing each and every day. And the weird thing is with this, even if you just reference the PMC or Prigozhin, whether it's good or bad, it's regarded as, and you can see it right there, as discrediting the Russian forces. And I think it is in part due to, or boils down to, the Kremlin's concerns or paranoia regarding an internal military or political coup at the hands of this group. But also about the embarrassment that the Russian invasion's best gains, as small as they've been recently, were because of the Wagner PMC. So anything even positive about this militia group has the ipso facto result of making the regular Russian army even looking bad. Then in a final quick funny to round it all off for today, guys, so here we have a noble Russian policeman doing his part to make Russia as Ukraine-free as possible, as he fights the good fight of ensuring any playgrounds or park benches are Russian state-approved colors only. And certainly not blue or yellow. What a hero. And I also love the high-up angle of this captured photo, suggesting that the person actually taking the photo is the cheeky offender, just painting things ways they should not be painted. Thus keeping the color police officer Sergei over there pretty busy, always on his toes to stamp out this most vile of criminal activity. So thanks for watching, guys. Please leave a comment, subscribe, like. Yeah, thanks for all of the support. I really do appreciate it. And I do hope to see all of you guys there in the next one. Cheers.